Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so we start the turn at the VDP, and we aim ourselves to this little fishing village that we can see, and it is modelled in the sim called Iralion or Irayon.
Your goal is just to be over that village at somewhere between 1,300 and 1,500 feet in that region. You don't have to fly via the VDP. In fact, if you fly visually, you'd probably be a little to the west of it. But just so long as you're over that village, fully configured, checklist complete, then you're good to shoot the approach.
Okay, so we can actually see in the bottom picture there's a little pier that kind of sticks out. And then actually, as we cross from the sea over to the land, as you say, we want to be between 1,300 and 1,500 feet, fully configured. That's where we want to be, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that village is extremely easy to see. You cannot mistake it for anything else. The pier obviously is there, that identifies it immediately. So the village is a very, very easy visual reference for you.
Okay, then the next thing that happens is we cross over a little army camp, and again, this is kind of modelled in the sim. I wouldn't say it's obvious that it's an army camp, but you can see there's definitely some kind of buildings, and
there's something down there, isn't there? Yeah, it's very obvious. You can't really mistake it. It's just an area with buildings and a bit of a courtyard sort of thing, and you see that very clearly. And you want to be about 1,200 feet over that, 1,000 feet, something like that. It's worth saying you could fly a little more to the left, that is to the west side, but only really by a couple of 100 meters, because if you go too far to the left, the terrain really rises up to meet you, and you will start getting EGPWS alerts going off, which obviously you don't want.
Okay, so is it likely we're going to be getting terrain, pull up warnings anyway?
I wouldn't want a pull up that you really shouldn't get that, but caution terrain is possible. If you have EGPWS fitted, you could get caution terrain. I did get that a couple of times, but that was the exception rather than the rule, really.
So we get to the army camp, and then this is where we've then got to start making that right turn, and this is where we now need to increase the rate of descent. Yeah,
you'll want to rack it up a little bit. The good thing about Samos is that the pappies are quite good there, and you can use the pappy in that turn so long as you can see them. And that, again, in real life is where the first officer is quite important, because the captain doesn't necessarily have the runway. Depending on how tight he needs to make the turn according to the wind, he may not be able to see the runway, and therefore the pappy as well. So the first officer's calling out, okay, you're a bit low, just reduce the rate of descent or increase the bank angle, whatever.
Gotcha. Okay, so we make the turn, and we start to increase the rate of descent a little bit, and then the next thing that happens is we pass over this thing called the greenhouse.
It's a greenhouse, as in a big glass house, and it's a very, very obvious. You could pretty much see it from space. I mean, it's a large greenhouse.
Okay, and you can't miss this, because I guess that the sun's twinkling off it and everything else, so you could see it.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, very obvious. You can't mistake that for anything else.
And it is modelled in the sim, and it is about 1.2 miles from the VOR. So
yeah, you want to be kind of 400 or 500 feet over that, and usually you'll be rolling out on final more or less over that. That's normally where your wings will be coming level. Again, depending where the wind is coming from and how you've managed that final turn, but you 400 or 500 feet.
So from the army camp, we make the turn, we descend down 400 feet, rolling out level over the greenhouse, and we should, if we haven't screwed it all up, we should see the runway dead ahead, right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Now, how much leeway, if at this point we've got 4 whites, is it game over? Or 4 reds, is it game over?
I certainly wouldn't be very comfortable with 4 whites there, because you're only a mile from the runway, so you have very little time to correct that. And okay, it's a 2,000 meter runway, but still it doesn't give you a whole lot of play wiggle room there. So I'd strongly consider going around. It depends on your rate of descent and where the wind is coming from, what your ground speed is, whether you can do it. We typically want to see a maximum of 1,000 feet per minute.
Okay.
on the final approach. Certainly at that stage, so late in the approach, you wouldn't want to see any more than 1,000. So if 1,000 feet per minute isn't enough, or if you feel that the situation just is not safely recoverable, then go around and try again.
Okay.
Likewise, 4 reds, considering that when you get to the greenhouse, you could be in a 30-degree bank at that point, acquiring the runway. If you got 4 reds, then you're in a really uncomfortable situation, and I would not want to be continuing that approach.
Okay, so perhaps 1 white or perhaps 3 reds is fine.
Oh yeah, no, that's normal. Yeah, I mean, it's quite unlikely that you're going to have 2 whites, 2 reds pegged all the way around that turn, and it's a very, very demanding place. So no, a little bit of wonder on the Pappy is okay, but you want to keep the approach as stable as you reasonably can within the confines of the challenging situation, you know.
Okay. Now, some people might be looking at we missed out a waypoint, which was this little village called Milloy, I think it's called. That's not for us, is it? That's for if you're coming here in an ATR or a Dash 8, because you're going to fly. Why is it that in the Dash 8 you would be flying a kind of longer final, whereas the A320 and the 737 cuts the turn? I don't quite understand.
Well, I guess your ground speed is going to be lower, it being a smaller aircraft, and so with a lower ground speed, your turn radius is smaller, so you can afford to go a little further to the northwest before making your turn, because you can do a tighter turn onto final, which then gives you a longer final and therefore makes the whole thing easier. I've got to say, none of this is an exact science, right. And if you have a strong wind from the north, then you wouldn't want to start your turn, even if you were flying a 757, you wouldn't want to start your turn over the army camp, because you're going to be fighting that wind, so you'll end up rolling out early and being on the wrong side of that greenhouse and aligning with the runway very, very late. So you would delay your turn a little bit, maybe not as far as that point number 3 that we've got there, but you would delay your turn a little beyond the army camp, or at least fly a reduced bank angle turn, maybe 15-20 degrees instead of 25, but if you got a tailwind, then you want to start your turn at the camp and roll on some serious bank, because you're going to be blown through it.
About 10 or 15 knot tailwind component for now for that turn onto final.
Start now.
Yeah, I agree with the tailwind. I think it's a good idea. Give you just a little bit more right descent, because you might need it now in the turn. Slightly high.
Approaching minimums. Minimums.
15 knots from the right.
The runway itself is not like Skiathos, as we say. It's a bit wider.
No, the runway itself is great.
Yeah, it's a bit wider, it's a bit longer, but you're probably still going to have to roll down to the end and turn around. You might not make the turn.
They normally park you up on the western end of the ramp, and the passengers are then bused to the terminal, or somewhere between the terminal and the western end, and then the ATRs and stuff park in front of the terminal normally, the big aircraft on the other side.
So the Delta and Echo, don't get confused, because it says that they're for the Hellenic Air Force, the Greek Air Force.
Yeah, there was always a Canadair CL215 or 2 parked there.
And you see them in the scenery as well, actually. They're in the scenery.
Yeah, exactly. And they looked quite derelict, and I always wondered if they were actually operational. And then one day, one of them disappeared, and then I saw another one with its engines running, which was nice.
Oh, right, okay.
So I guess they still flew, but they didn't look like they were in great shape.
Yeah.
Maybe they just needed a bit of paint.
Maybe just a bit of TLC. All right, so don't use Delta and Echo, otherwise you might find yourself on the wrong side of the...
No, well, there's a dead end. You don't want to go up there.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's have a quick look then. So we've kind of made it down. Let's just have a quick look. I know that you say that this is relatively unusual to do it the other way, but we're going to look at it anyway. So it's the same kind of thing, except we don't have those visual waypoints because you're out over the sea here. So you're going to make that right turn, and you're going to head to the waypoint 1 on this side, which is on the 118 radial at 3.3 miles. And again, you want to be, I guess, fully configured and everything by the time you get there. And that's at 1,150 feet, then down to 1,000 feet. And then we descend down, so 2.4 on the 087 radial, which is this kind of waypoint 3, that's 700 feet. And then we've got one final one, which is to cross the east end of the pier. There's actually 2 piers, but it's the one nearer to the airport, and this is modelled in the scenery. Cross this pier at 400 feet. So all that remains now is to go off and actually try it for real. So we're going to try it in the A320. Nick, thank you so much for helping us with Samos, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thanks, Ben.
So welcome back on board our trusty Aegean A320, and we talked about it a lot, but we haven't actually made it here yet. We are finally in Athens, and we're just deboarding the passengers from